Hi, Kim here at Wild Hearts and Wildflowers. Today's video is all about HISTORATHON. It's a BookTube community read-along project that was started only 3 years ago by Vin at Revenant Reads. I can hardly believe it's only been 3 years. I participated last year and I absolutely loved it. In fact, HISTORATHON was one of the main reasons I started this BookTube channel. I love reading history and I love getting recommendations from others who read history. Now, getting historical fiction recommendations from others is pretty easy, but getting good nonfiction historical recommendations is not as easy as you might think. At least I never thought so. But now, well, it's an endless supply of recommendations piled on to my ever-increasing pile of possibilities. This year, as last year, there are multiple co-hosts, one of whom is Mark over at Book Time with Elvis. And how about Justin, a new co-host over at Triumphal Reads? Lots of great recommendations everywhere. Many other great co-hosts. You can go to Vin's channel, Revenant Reads, and see a list of all the co-hosts and go to their channels and investigate them. And you can also check them out here because I'm going to put them in the description below. Now, the purpose of HISTORATHON, as Vin puts it, is to share with others the joy of reading nonfiction history. Many people are not used to reading nonfiction, and especially nonfiction history can seem intimidating or overwhelming to them. Even those of us who read it regularly can feel a sense of this if the book is extra long or the narrative is a bit dry. So here during HISTORATHON, we have the chance to not only explore all sorts of new as well as favorite nonfiction history writers, but we have the chance to share the ones that we really like with others. Now, you only need to read one book a quarter to be fully participating in HISTORATHON. You can read a lot more than that, but the goal here is to read a little more than you usually do. So if you never read any nonfiction history, well, one is a lot more, isn't it? Now, reading the books is the main part of participating, and you are considered to be fully participating if you do that. But you can go farther if you'd like. You can join the Discord, which I will link below, that Vin is running along with his co-hosts, where people discuss the different books they're reading throughout the year. And if you really want to go farther than that, Vin has talked about side quests. Side quests are just history-related activities, so maybe watching historical documentaries or perhaps visiting a historical site, experimenting with historical recipes. If you're very talented, designing and sewing historical costumes. Maybe even reenacting historical drama. That would be fun. I'm only going so far as to try out some historical recipes, and I'll share the book I'm using for that with you in just a moment. So what am I reading for HISTORATHON 2025 Quarter 1? Well, I already have started 3 books, and they are Pathogenesis, A History of the World in 8 Plagues. Pathogenesis is written by Jonathan Kennedy. It moves along at a quick rate because it's covering a lot of history and it's jam-packed with facts. Lots of new information for me, but I'm not reading it to study for a test. I'm not trying to remember all the different names and facts. I'm just taking it all in and getting an overview of it all and being astonished at just how much effect the plagues did have on history and how that effect could be both direct in obvious ways and indirect, influencing so much more than I'd ever thought about before. Now, I started this for Nonfiction November just a few months ago, and I was trying to read so many nonfiction books that month that I didn't get too far. I think I got about 40% of the way through when I decided to set it aside and finish it this year. Did I find it interesting? Definitely. But it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be more about the science of the germs and the bacteria and the disease, the plagues. And in reality, as the subtitle says, it's more about the history of the world as seen through the lens of these big 8 plagues. So Well, it seems to me quite appropriate then to read during quarter one of Historathon. So I'm actually gone back and reread the first 40%, and now I'm continuing and hope to finish it within the next 2 months, by the end of March. I don't see any problems with that. It is quite an interesting book so far. Now, the second book that I'm reading for quarter one of Historathon, I started just last week, and I am absolutely loving it. I'm enthralled by it. It has a very fast pace, not too fast, but I mean, you don't get lost or anything. It just goes by so quickly. You're like, wow, I'm already done with the first chapter. Oh, second chapter, third chapter. It moves along, and very interesting. This is, I'm sure, in large part due to the talent of the writer. The narrative is done so well. This is Steve Brusatte, or Broussat. I'm not sure how you say his name, but I really like his writing style. This is The Rise and Fall of Dinosaurs. Now, I've always been somewhat interested in dinosaurs, but being the age I am, 59, this was not a topic that was really covered when I was in school, sort of like the metric system here in the US. Anyway, maybe because it was never covered, it always intrigued me. The Jurassic Park movies, oh, so exciting and sad. And of course, I know they're not based on a lot of fact, but what are the facts? I was curious. So that's why I got this book to read. And boy, was I not just not disappointed, but I was very pleasantly surprised. Not only is the writer's writing style great, but the information I'm learning is very exciting and very understandable, and also not what I was necessarily expecting. There's a lot more to the dinosaurs than I ever imagined. And one thing I've already learned in this book, and I'm about a quarter of the way through it already, is that there have been a lot of new developments, a lot of new discoveries just in the last decade or two. So I'm very eager to finish reading this book. Now, the third book I'm reading for Historathon quarter one is The Missing Thread, A Women's History of the Ancient World by Daisy Dunn. Now, last year for Historathon quarter one, I read Daisy Dunn's book on Pliny, The Shadow of Vesuvius, A Life of Pliny. I found her writing style to be elegant, exciting, rich in everyday historical details, as well as obvious, deep research. The reviews on her academic historical writing are top-notch, and I can see why. Now, what she does with this book, having started it recently, I agree with the reviewers already. She has done a fabulous job incorporating the women that were alive during the ancient times, where we usually just hear about all the famous heroes. She incorporates the women, not just talking about some of the more famous women that we've heard bits about here and there, but about other women we've never heard of. And while doing this, she does not take away anything from the men that we have learned about in ancient history. She just brings the women forward out of the shadows, puts the spotlight on them, explores what they did, why they did what they did, how they did it, and why we should care about it, how it influenced what else happened in history at that time. So I am really looking forward to working my way through this book this quarter, and I will be sharing with you as I do so. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be exploring some historical recipes as I read in quarter one. This is Tasting History, Explore the Past Through 4,000 Years of History by Max Miller. Now, Max has his own YouTube channel, which I will link down below. I believe it's by the same name, Tasting History. But to be honest, I haven't followed his channel. I found this book while browsing in a bookstore, and when I looked through it, I was so impressed because not only does he have great food photography illustrating the recipes that he describes so well, but his text, in addition, of course, to including the recipe, his text includes descriptions of the historical context at the time. For instance, here are what I think are called globi. Don't those look good? Yeah, delicious. Not sure of the pronunciation, but globi from Cato the Elder in 79. Mix the cheese and spelt, sufficient to make the number desired. Pour lard into a hot copper vessel and fry 1 or 2 at a time, turning them frequently with 2 rods, and remove when done. Spread with honey, sprinkle with poppy seed, and serve. Now, Max goes on to say that he thinks of Globy as an early form of cheesecake bites, the kind you might find on a tray at a holiday party, and that's exactly when you might have found them in ancient Rome as well. One such holiday was Saturnalia. For a few wonderful days each December, Romans would remove the trappings of their rigid class system and party down. He quotes some more primary sources, Pliny the Younger, The Life of Augustus by Suetonius, and others, to describe the holiday of Saturnalia and their customs and traditions at that time. He also will include artwork from the time period, as well as the geographic location and specific time. Now, I will admit there are many recipes in this book that I probably will not try. I mean, being a vegetarian rules out a good portion of them already, like this stew of lamb described here from Babylon in, 1740 BCE. The recipes for some of these are quite simple. Stew of lamb, meat is used. You prepare water, you add fat, you add fine-grained salt, risnatu, onion, Persian shallot, and milk. You crush and add leek and garlic. From the Yale Babylonian tablets. Again, I'm just loving the photography in this book, as well as all the primary source documentation and the discussion of history, which Max Miller has researched very well for this book, Tasting History. Now, those 3 nonfiction books that I talked about for quarter 1, plus the Tasting History cookbook, are those all I'm going to read in these 3 months, January through March? Maybe. They're thick books, they're interesting books, and they're sufficient, I feel like, to completely fulfill the requirements of Historathon. But if I happen to finish them earlier, you can bet I will pick another book or 2 from all the piles of possibility that the other BookTube content creators who are doing videos on Historathon will put out there. I am sure there are other books that they're going to talk about that I am definitely going to want to read, whether this year or next. So I will keep you updated at the end of each month in my monthly reading reflections, where I go over all the books I've read the previous month to let you know the progress I'm making for Historathon. And then at the end of quarter 1, I will do a video summing up my whole quarter of reading. So tell me, are you participating in Historathon in 2025? And if so, what are you thinking of reading? Is there just one really special book you've been saving for this? Are you still thinking and, exploring different videos to get ideas for different books? Or do you already have such a huge pile you have no idea where you're going to start or if you'll finish? Let me know in the comments below, because I am very interested in always finding more great history books. And let me encourage you, if you've never read nonfiction history before, give it a try, because it is so much fun and so interesting. Really, you can go very specific. I went broad this time, but you could go very specific. You could read about ancient history games, or just some biographies of specific people in history that intrigue you. You can do whatever you want. So until next time, happy reading, and especially happy historical reading.